And welcome to the Cardinals Nest 2.0. This is the show where we visit with alumni of St. Mary's University, former student athletes, and talk about their glory days as a student athlete at St. Mary's and get caught up with what they're doing now. And today, our guest is Tom Rice, 1982 graduate of St. Mary's. And it'll be great to hear from him, former men's hockey player for St. Mary's. I'm Dean Beckman, the faculty athletics representative for the Cardinals. My co-host, as always, is Donny Nadeau, the sports information director for St. Mary's. And Donny, I'll kind of let you introduce Tom a little bit because I know you two are close friends.
Yeah, we go way back. I remember being in Benilde Hall when I lived there, and Tom was the RA there, and so we go all the way back to my freshman year, which is let's just say it's a long time ago. So Tom, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I know you're busy, and today was a busy surgery day for you, and welcome to Cardinals Nest 2.0.
Well, thanks for inviting me, Donnie. This is really kind of an honor.
Tom, if you could just kind of just start things out, just kind of take us back to how your path ended up taking you to St. Mary's at that point, St. Mary's College.
Yeah. My dad grew up in Winona, and he actually went to St. Mary's. And after 3 years, he was able to go to medical school at the University of Nebraska. So that kind of, I had a familiarity with St. Mary's from that. But then I also had an uncle, my mom's brother, Rick Rishabi, was a tennis player, and Rick went to St. Mary's also from Owatonna. And we would go down and visit him when he would be in Gaslight and Blue Angel and things like that. So again, that kind of strengthened it up. Then my older brother, Steve, 3 years older than I was, went to St. Mary's. I played, sports throughout high school, and I really thought I wanted to continue that at the college level. And my recruiting, I was joke with Don Olson about it. I said my recruiting visit was actually a St. Mary's game against St. John's up at the hockey rink up at St. Cloud. Never did talk to Don, never talked to anybody. And I just showed up on campus, freshman year, because I loved the environment down at St. Mary's, the Bluffs, and Nona. So that's how I ended up going there, just kind of a little bit of a family history. I knew that I wanted to play sports. I really hadn't paid attention to how good that I went to. I was going to be able to play. It was more of the environment of St. Mary's and what Winona had to offer with the Bluffs and that.
And Tom, talk a little bit. You were a biology major, is that correct?
Yeah, biology major. I wanted to get into school, and that was really important to me. And I think the environment that St. Mary's allowed, student athletes to truly be student athletes. Dick Cowles was my advisor, and I really looked up a lot to Dick, and he always encouraged, to be able to do whatever you needed to do, whether, so when it came to school, he knew that, that there were priorities there, but he also said that, that you have to have, the advantage of a school like St. Mary's is the student athlete. And, you need to be able to participate in a lot of different things there. And luckily my freshman year was Don Olson's second year. So when I went and did my recruiting trip at St. John's, that was Don's first year as the hockey coach. My freshman year was Don's second year as hockey coach. And Don was all about the student athlete too. He knew that I couldn't during the hockey season. He knew that I had commitments for labs and tests and classwork that he really made it I wouldn't say easy to be able to pull it off, but he sure didn't make it difficult either.
Well, before we start talking about hockey, because I'm really excited to just kind of hit that way back button and talk about hockey at St. Mary's in the early '80s. But you mentioned the a lot of things that you had going on, and it really wasn't just hockey, and it wasn't just your schoolwork. I mean, like I had mentioned at the beginning, you were an RA. You sang with the oldie moldies. Talk a little bit about how you juggled all of those things and were able to succeed really at every one of them.
Well, I think I enjoyed it all. When I was playing hockey, I really enjoyed that. I probably enjoyed that more than I enjoyed the schoolwork. Being in the shows, a Gaslight, Blue Angel, Wee Hours, being on in the oldies was another good escape. But I think it was really unique to St. Mary's to allow somebody to be participate in all these things. You could participate in as much as you wanted or as little as you wanted. I enjoyed those things so much that when I participated in them, I gave it as much as I could.
And Tom, I think, all of those things are still very much true today. We really encourage that student activism to get involved in as much as they can. And really a small university like St. Mary's needs that kind of involvement and commitment from its students and its student athletes. When I think of St. Mary's, I think of certain legends at the university. And certainly Dr. Cowles is one of them. So I'm glad
Absolutely.
You brought him up earlier. And certainly Don Olson is as well. So I think this segues into what Donny wanted to get into. Talk about some of your memories of Don Olson as your hockey coach.
Oh, Don, I don't think he ever got outwardly angry, ever. And he sure had a reason to. My freshman year, I think we won 2 games. I'll have to look at the schedule that Donny put out recently to see exactly how many games we won my freshman year, but it wasn't many. Sophomore year, Don started to get his ability to go out and talk with high school kids, and he still had his connections up in Duluth, and we started to see a little bit of a stream of kids from up north coming down to play at hockey. And sophomore year was a little bit better. Junior year, it was outstanding. We got a couple really great players from the Twin Cities. Greg Dick, Dickers was All-American, Hall of Famer, and his ability to keep the puck out of the net made the difference between, being an okay team to a team that went to the national championships that year. So Don was a great role model because he worked his butt off. He was able to understand that as a student athlete, my priority wasn't always going to be hockey. I remember tryouts one year, and I think it was probably my sophomore year. During tryouts, it was the same time that we had Gaslight. So Don let me not try out so I could perform in Gaslight. That's unheard of. And I wasn't even a 2-year junior player,
I think that probably, Tom, actually very interesting is hockey today at St. Mary's compared to the way it was back when you played. Kids came out of high school back when you
Right.
and I were at St. Mary's. Now everybody comes out of juniors, and it really is it's a completely different landscape right now, which segues into what I really want to talk about, because I remember it well. Talk a little bit about the bus rides, because a lot of people don't realize now that 11 o'clock on a Monday night, we were traveling to Rochester to practice because we didn't have ice to practice. Talk a little bit about that.
Our preseason would start usually in mid to late September, and we would get 1 hour of ice time at Graham Arena or at the rec center in Rochester, and we would pile into guys' cars and guys' vans, and we would go skate for an afternoon. And then once the weather started to turn a little bit, we had outdoor ice, and early on in the season, it was with a compressor system, just like the rink in back of you, Donny, except we didn't have a Zamboni. So early on in the season, we were able to get out on the ice outside earlier than you would in a community rink because of the compressors. Well, because we didn't have a Zamboni, the ice went from being functionally an inch thick to all of a sudden, 8 to 10 inches thick. And the Zamboni effect would have helped if we would have had a Zamboni, but the compressors had no benefit after that point. And so then we would, for tryouts, during tryouts, we would go back and forth until the ice was able to be skatable outside. We would go to Rochester every night. We would usually leave at 8 o'clock. We'd get there at 9. We would have a half an hour to get ready on the ice. We'd go and skate for 2 hours, and then we'd be on our way back. We'd have bag lunches that we would get from Mr. Gilhooly up in food services, and we'd get back on campus at midnight, 1 o'clock, and then we'd have to study for a couple hours. So it was really grueling during our tryouts until we could get our ice outside. And that's, I love talking to the young players now because they've got such a great setup, on campus, and that they're skating, as soon as they get on the campus in September. And we'd skate 1 day a week for a couple weeks before tryouts, and then we would do that for a couple weeks until the ice was available outside. And then once the ice was available outside, we'd skate, we'd shovel, we'd flood. We had a warming house. It was like being a kid playing hockey again, except we were trying to compete, NCAA.
And then came the winter of 1981, 82, when we put up the bubble.
It was 81, 82.
Talk a little bit about the bubble.
81, 82. So we had just come off of our national championship appearance. And we were just pumped. We thought, we're going to compete to be one of the top teams in the country. And up until Christmas, we were. We had really performed well in the Thanksgiving MIAC tournament. And we had, up to Christmas time, we had 5 of the top 10 scorers in the MIAC. We were ranked in the top 5 in the country. We were really playing some really good hockey. And then all of a sudden, right before Christmas break, we heard that Brother Peter had bought a bubble that was going to be put up while we were gone on Christmas break, so we could come back and skate indoors, for the rest of the year. We thought, this is phenomenal. We're not going to have to worry about snow. We're not going to have, it'll be cold, but we're going to be able to really skate inside without dealing with the elements too bad. So we had to get back on campus around, I think it was January 2nd. We were supposed to be on campus January 2nd. So I was driving down from St. Cloud on New Year's Day, and I would always take Highway 52 to Highway 14 through Rochester, and then I'd take 14 east, and I'd always, I'd come around the corner on Highway 14 and I'd see the campus as, we're back, So I'm driving back on New Year's Day in 1982, and it's snowing like crazy, absolutely snowing like crazy. It's 0 outside. I'm going, I don't care. The bubble's up. This is going to be phenomenal. We'll be able to skate tonight. Come around the corner, looking down, towards campus, and it was snowing so hard I couldn't see the bubble. Well, I couldn't see the bubble because the bubble was never put up. Brother Peter kind of dropped the ball and didn't have guys hired to get the bubble up. So we then spent our entire winter break, training after the holidays, putting the bubble together. So the hockey team that year, it was brutally cold out. We were putting the bubble together by hand, and by the end of the break, we had it together. It was now functional, but we only practiced a handful of times back in Rochester. and that was kind of the demise of the season. We had some guys, we had some guys that failed out of school, and we lost an opportunity to stay in shape and really get better. And we dropped out of the rankings, and it was really unfortunate because we had a really good group of guys. But the bubble is kind of the start of where I think St. Mary's is right now. It started with us putting the bubble together my senior year, and then from there, they started playing games on campus. I don't know if it was the next year, Donnie, or the year after.
Yeah, it was the next year
on campus. I mean, that was unbelievable. They actually bought a Zamboni.
So Tom, kind of what I was going to say, Tom, what you were saying is that as you were driving down the hill on Highway 14 on that January 2nd, you might say your bubble was burst when you saw it.
It was funny because as I was driving in, I'm going, okay, I can't see. The hockey rink was by the old outdoor swimming pool. We had an outdoor swimming pool out there. And so, it was far enough over where the rink is now that it was snowing so hard you couldn't see it. So it didn't click with me until I actually drove onto campus towards the athletic, building and said, oh my God, there is no bubble up. You drove by and they were on pallets on the ice. And so the pallets were so heavy and there was so much snow that we had to get the bubble up. Otherwise, we still weren't going to be able to skate because the pallets were so heavy.
Right. And it gets what people may not realize is the bubble came in pieces, and you actually took they toggled together with little wooden toggles, and you literally stitched it together so that it could be then blown up. But yeah, it was an interesting time. But Tom, the other thing I wanted to talk about as we look back at your time, and I look back and kind of marvel. You guys, when you played in your era, you just accepted what you had. I mean, I remember times when you guys would go to practice, you'd put your everything on in the toner center in the basement where our locker room was, and you'd walk over with skate guards on, and you'd walk through the parking lot and onto the rink. That was just the way it was. If you could just kind of look at what, and as you mentioned, you talk to the players now, I know you've done the starting lineup for them in the locker room. What do you tell them now that you experienced when you were here, and how do you relate that to them now?
I think for a lot of us that played then, it was just an extension of us growing up playing hockey. We used to put our equipment on at home, and I'd wear my skate guards and walk across the street to the rink. So it was really an extension of how I learned to love and play the game. These kids nowadays, you're talking to a 20-year-old, 21-year-old freshman who spent the last 2 or 3 years playing junior hockey in some, Odessa, Texas somewhere, or Fairbanks, Alaska. And they have the absolute best quality of equipment. But, what I've been really impressed about the St. Mary's kids is that they're still really grounded. They've really, the kids that end up at St. Mary's are really well grounded. I think they appreciate the fact that they've got a good gig, but they also represent the school really well. And so I think they love to hear these, old time hockey stories, because they absolutely have nothing to compare it to. And, I think they just get a kick out of, us old guys that, really, they see us playing at the alumni games, and they still think we can skate a little bit and shoot the puck a little bit. But, we really had a great time. And I think, they've been able to build similar relationships that we had to. They're kind of cake eaters with the way with the facilities that they've got. It's phenomenal.
Can you, Tom, I know one of the things that has always impressed me is you've always stayed connected with the program with St. Mary's. It wasn't just you graduated and boom, you're gone, you're off doing your own thing. You've always been connected. You've been to all the golf outings, you come to all of the alumni games, sometimes you come down just to watch a game. Talk a little bit about what St. Mary's means to you right now as an alum.
Well, they've done just an incredible job with the physical plant. When we left, the dormitories were what they were. Brother Charles Hall was old, and they've really done a great job of coming to the 21st century with facilities and programs. Nursing program, OT program, PT programs. At least I see that from the science standpoint. My daughter was a graduate of the education department, and what a phenomenal education department they have. She when she got into the workforce, her ability to put things together as a second grade teacher were so heads and tails above any other school. St. Ben's, St. John's, all the schools that you think are the elite schools of the conference. I think St. Mary's is such a quiet elite school that it's really it's helped make me what I do. The 4 years there were really special. All my close friends now are all my St. Mary's friends, whether they were the hockey players or whether they were just people we lived with in the dormitories. The education was second to none. Even though we didn't have the facilities that some of the bigger schools had, the people that were committed to teaching made it such a great environment to learn that that's why I'm committed to the schools, because it really did make my perspective on life very, it really helped build who I was.
Tom, I had the pleasure of teaching your daughter in one class. It was an introduction to mass communication class, and it was just one semester, but I got to know her relatively well, and I'm not at all surprised that she is going on to have a wonderful career. She was an outstanding student and even better person. So
she loved it down there. Yeah. Unfortunately with her, with all this COVID stuff, she really got frustrated with the online learning. She was at Nativity in St. Paul, and she just really couldn't see herself enjoying teaching, doing that. So she actually she took a job with a professional hockey player to be his family's nanny down in Tampa Bay, Donny. So they won the Stanley Cup.
Not a bad gig.
I've never seen her happier.
Yeah, not a bad location either.
No, she's been having a ball. But she when she left the job in June, she went to him and said, I just can't do it right now. The way that the craziness of the time right now, I can't do it. And they said, well, when you're this is an opportunity that you have to take. And when you're ready to come back, the door's open. And she's a teacher by heart. I mean, she really is. And so, everything's crazy right now.
Yeah. Tom,
Tom,
I was just going to say, go ahead, Donny.
I was just going to say, Tom, that we spent so much time talking about your hockey at St. Mary's. I want you to talk a little bit about what you're doing now, because we know a lot of doctors, but you are a doctor above all doctors, and just talk about what you're doing now, because we haven't even touched on what your profession is after St. Mary's.
Well, after St. Mary's, I got married to Eileen Long. We've had 5 kids. We now have 5 grandkids. Right after school, I did a year of graduate work up at the University of North Dakota, and then got into medical school at the University of Minnesota. Did my residency at the University of Minnesota in ophthalmology. And then right out of residency, I took a job with the St. Paul Eye Clinic in 1993, and I've been with them since then. it's a great practice where I think there's 14 or 15 doctors. One of my St. Mary's friends just recently was hired as one of our optometrists, Al Hine.
I remember
So,
Hondo.
Yeah, Hondo's one of my employees now, so he's having to suffer with that. But Eileen and I, I've been really fortunate in my medical practice. Eileen and I love to get out and do stuff. We play a lot of golf in the summer. We don't do the insanely crazy trips that Donny and Dee Dee pull off, but boy, I sure enjoy watching those videos though. Yeah, so we spend a lot of time, enjoying our kids and enjoying the grandkids, and looking forward to the time where I can start cutting back a little bit more on work and do the things that I still want to do and still can do, as time is passing on.
Right.
And Donny, you asked the same question that I was going to ask actually, but I'll follow up. We talked about how COVID affected your daughter's teaching career a little bit there. Tom, how about in the medical profession? In what ways did or didn't it impact your practice at all?
Well, it was very interesting. When they started to talk about what was considered essential and non-essential. They determined that our medical ophthalmology practice was considered non-essential. They shut us down from March until May. And we were only seeing one doctor was seeing emergency patients every day. So I went almost a month without being in clinic, which was, unheard of unless it was my choice to do it. We got back into clinic in early May, and fortunately, there's been a good rebound. That's a scary picture, Donny. We were able to rebound pretty well, and we've stayed pretty busy. So now with all the news spiking, I hope they still consider that our medical practice is essential, and they won't make us stop seeing patients, because a lot of what I do is elective, but we also see a lot of people that have medical problems that need to have continued follow-up. And, I'd like to think what I do is just as important as somebody working at Lowe's.
No question about it. Donny, just a few minutes left. Anything else for Tom?
Oh, I could talk to Tom forever. I guess, Tom, the other thing we didn't talk about, and one of the reasons that we're taping this now rather than 2 weeks ago, how was your moose hunt in Montana?
Well, it wasn't a moose hunt, but it was an elk hunt, and it was awesome.
Oh, elk hunt.
It was, I every other year, my three brothers and I go out to Montana and elk hunt. And then in the other years, I go with one of my brothers down in Colorado to elk hunt. And we all four got elk within 2 days. It was wonderful. It was the coldest we've ever hunted. It was the day that we shot our elk. It was 5 below. They had just gotten about a foot of snow. But, that's one of the things that I love to do too. And, just getting out in the mountains, or this weekend is deer hunting down by Lanesboro. So we'll be down in your guys' neighborhood this weekend, hunting some property that we have down by Whalen and Lanesboro and Rushford. So, yeah, but it was a great trip. It was a great trip. A lot of snow, a lot of cold weather. But
If we, Dean, do we have a minute? Do we have
Yeah,
a minute left?
you got a minute. Yep, you got a couple minutes.
In a minute, Tom. In a minute, aside from putting up the bubble, think back to maybe one of your favorite moments as a student athlete at St. Mary's.
Boy, it really had to be my junior year. Everything just came together so well. It was my first year as an RA, so I was really engaged in a lot of things in campus. And I know people say, how did you manage it? And it just flowed. I mean, it was just stuff that I enjoyed doing, and it really wasn't hard to manage at all. Whether it was being an RA, whether it was doing the musical things, whether it was working in the labs, whether it was playing hockey with with good friends. It's those type of memories that and again, it's the environment of St. Mary's that I think really allowed allowed me to be able to do all those things.
Yep. When you love what you're doing, you barely know you're doing
Yeah.
it, right?
Yeah.
So, all right.
Can you see over my right shoulder? That's my shrine to me.
Yeah, no,
That's
we appreciate the memorabilia there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's my St.
I know,
Mary's
I know
letter.
you're a
It's-
proud Redmond, Tom.
Yeah, I'm still a Redmond, even though I know Cardinals are pretty birds.
All right, Dr. Tom Price, or Dr. Tom Rice, our 1982 men's hockey player, a graduate of St. Mary's. Thanks for joining us here on the Cardinals Nest today.
Thanks a
Thanks,
lot,
Steve.
Tom.
Thanks, Donnie.
You
We'll be in
bet. That's
touch,
going to
my
do
friend.
it for Cardinals Nest 2.0. Thanks for watching.